Welcome to my very first podcast, you guys, 10 Within. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to record. This is something that I've genuinely been wanting to do for about over 3 years now that I just haven't done. So, welcome. Welcome to my very first podcast. How did I get here? That's what we're calling it today. Most of you listening to this very first podcast probably already know my story from a widow to now a woman going through a divorce. However, what I wanted to share with you is the part of the story that you guys probably don't know. How did I get here? And that's a really good question because I keep asking myself that same thing. However, God has been so faithful and He truly has shown me and taught me so much through this process that I've gone through this heartbreak that I've gone through, that it's molding me to be the person that He always wanted me to be, that He always saw in me, the person that I just never chose to become. And for that, I am extremely grateful. And the reason that I feel led to even start a podcast is because I'm not the expert by any means, you guys, in life, and I definitely don't want to claim that. So disregard anything that you feel like I say when it comes to how to do life, because everybody obviously has their own internal compass. And if there's anything that I feel like I would love to give you in this podcast, is how to follow your own internal compass. My path is not going to look like your path, and your path is not going to look like my path. However, we all do have a path, and there is a smooth route and there is a very off-road bumpy route. And I can share with you, one thing I'm great at is taking the bumpy route. And so if I can teach you anything through this podcast, is possibly to follow your own internal compass to help you get on that smooth path so life is easier, less painful, and truly you can become the person that God created you to be, maybe a heck of a lot faster. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Loni. I am a daughter to the Almighty King. I have two beautiful daughters, and I am a widow and a woman that's going through a divorce unexpectedly, and a very heartbreaking, painful divorce. I'm going to say that out right and clear. However, my story with my late husband is a story that I feel like I want to share in a whole nother podcast. Jim was an amazing human. He was diagnosed with glioblastoma brain cancer, and that ultimately took his life in a very short amount of time, 3 months. He went from living a normal life to being cremated. So that story in itself is something that I do want to share, but I'm going to share that in a later podcast with probably my best friends and my daughters, because he has impacted so many people in this world. And I feel like his story is just enough to share on its own episode. So stay tuned for that. It will be coming in the future. So today I want to share how I got here, how I became the woman that I am sitting in this chair right now, and how faithful that the Lord has been to me and my family to be able to get us to the point that we are in. Truly, I've been wanting to record this podcast for so many years, and I just have not been listening to my inner instinct. I've been procrastinating, putting things off, putting that growth off because it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to hop on here and share their life with the world. However, I do feel like God has always been laying on my heart, even prior to Jim, that I had a bigger purpose and calling. And I feel like I'm now at the point in my life where I'm just ready to tap into that purpose and calling. God has gotten my attention. He has woken me up to say, hey, look, okay, I've tried it my way, and my way is not working. So let's follow your way, God. And I have to tell you guys, is that it genuinely has been the most incredible, eye-opening process that I've ever gone through, is when you genuinely surrender everything in your life to the Lord and you genuinely follow his path and his calling and his knowing, and you trust in him. It truly is life altering, life changing, and so, so worth it. If there's anything that you hear out of my podcast today, is that following God's path is so worth it. Period. We could end there. However, For everybody else that wants to hear the scoop on my life and what happened, stay tuned because that's what I will share. Honestly, I'm definitely not going to share all of the specific details because I don't think that that's even necessary. This podcast genuinely for me is because I want to bring light to the world. I want to bring healing. I want to show God's love through me. So it's never going to be a platform to throw somebody else under the table or share dirty, dark stuff because that's not where the lesson lies anyway. So genuinely, I want to teach the lessons that I learned from the things that I've gone through in my life and hope that maybe one day it can help you in your life to maybe, if it even could skip ahead of a couple errors that I've made and make your life a little bit smoother, then I feel like this podcast and doing something that's completely out of my comfort zone, worth it. How did I get here? So that is the name of this podcast. And I thought that that was a great name because I just kind of wanted to start from where I'm at right now in my life. Things that I've learned from healing through, broken family as I was growing up into, getting married at 20 years old, which was extremely difficult and hard, to having kids at 21, which was hard. There's a lot of things that I've learned through life, and there's been a lot of lows and there's been a lot of highs. And I think all of those things that we can talk about throughout this podcast is what I really want to do. However, when I was asking myself, what do I want my very first episode to be about? I genuinely wanted it to be about right here, right now, who I am today, the woman that's sitting in front of you that actually finally is doing the things that I knew I was called to do a very long time ago, and how I became able to do that. So I can tell you the silver lining in heartbreak and breakups, and if you're going through a rough time in your life, is that you can genuinely use that as fuel to a rocket ship and launch you into the healing and next level of your life. Or you can use it to destroy you. I genuinely believe you can use the fuel to launch you, or you can use the fuel to burn you. And really, the choice is ours. Going through adversity in my life, I thank God because I believe that He ultimately gave me a spirit of hope and a spirit of positivity that I feel like I always try to see the silver lining in even the hard situations. And not that I'm always positive and always upbeat, because that's not real life. I mean, I definitely have times where I'm down and struggling. And I'll share with you more even how that happened to me. Really, really dark place that I got in because I wasn't following God's plan. But if you choose in the hard times to use the hard to mold you into a diamond. Diamonds are created under pressure, or you can be pressed into a powder and completely destroyed. Truly, we always have two paths to take. And I genuinely believe that God gives us free will to choose. And if there's anything that I can share with you today is I want to help you choose the path to become the diamond, because that's who God wants you to be. That's who God created you to be. Life is hard. Things happen to us that cause us pain, that cause us heartbreak, that we have no control over, but we are 100% capable of choosing how we respond to that heartache. And I know that it's hard when you're in the midst of it to be able to show up and to say, like, oh my gosh, it hurts so bad. Like, how do you pull yourself out? Is the only advice that I can give you is you can't pull yourself out. You can't do it alone. You cannot. We do not have that within us. However, God does. And if you literally fall to your knees and you surrender to Him and you say, Lord, I've tried it my way. I've tried so hard. And I did. I tried all the counselings, the therapies, the this, the that, everything. I'm so broken, Lord. Fix me, fix me, fix me. Doing all the things thinking that I am in control. And as soon as I surrendered, you guys, I said, okay, Lord, Loni Morris can't fix this. Help me, heal me, mold me. Immediately, He changed my life forever. And I hope that I can share that inspiration with you to allow God to mold you and change your life forever. You may be in a hard season. You may be taking all the blame. You may be beating yourself up. You may be saying, It's my fault. I'm not enough. If I would have done this, maybe this. And if I would have done that, maybe that. You just, I feel like if there's anything that I have a superpower in, and my God given gift is to truly beat myself up. I am the hardest critic under the sun of myself because I've always been a perfectionist. I've always wanted to show up and be my best self. And truly, even deeper than that, I was always searching to be loved, right? And I was always trying so hard, like, if I could just be perfect, then I will be lovable, because that was my own broken childhood trauma that I had to deal with throughout my life, and learn that this is not about perfection. This is about giving yourself grace and forgiveness and realizing that we're human, and that this is a journey that we're all on, and it's never going to hit the destination. The destination, I believe, is death, truly. So the journey is what we're always on, and that's where life is at, and that's where the living is supposed to be. And there's going to be hard times in our journey, and there's going to be really fun, easy times in the journey. It's just getting through the journey. And when we're in those seasons, that we learn to give ourselves grace, and we learn to give ourselves forgiveness. We learn to give others forgiveness. We learn to look at things for what they are and take the lesson from them and continue to move on to our journey. We don't have the control over everything else, everybody else, every other circumstance. We only have control over ourselves and how we choose to show up in the world and how we choose to respond. And that is life's purpose. That is our journey. How are you going to live your life where you show up in the world? And how are you responding to the things that have happened to you or that are going to happen to you? Truly becoming your best self, genuinely, I believe, starts with connecting with God, listening to God, what God is telling you to do in your life, and doing it. I think it's simple as that. However, we get in our heads and we doubt and we question and we get confused and we get off track and we want to do it our way. Satan is really good at saying the ways of this world are so fun. It's like a big bright light shining over here. You get distracted. You're like, wow, like that looks so fun and exciting and bright and this and that. And then you realize when you fall into that temptation that it was a big facade. It's extremely painful, and it pushes you right off the path that God had created for you, and it makes you floundering and lost. If you're in your life and you're floundering and lost, this podcast is for you today, because I was floundering and lost. I was off the right path. I was completely disconnected from God and truly living in chaos, like chaos within. And I'm going to share with you my story and how I got there. I heard a sermon, and I want to share it with you because I felt like it had taught me so much in truly learning to forgive myself and to give myself grace. And in the sermon, the pastor had asked two questions. Why am I punishing myself for decisions I made with the knowledge I didn't have at the time? Okay. And why am I punishing myself with yesterday's mistakes and today's realizations? The first question, why am I punishing myself for decisions I made with the knowledge I didn't know I had at the time? You don't know what you don't know. I can tell you that I genuinely have always tried to live my life doing what I thought was right, doing what I thought was best, doing the right thing. However, when you go through adversity, when Jimmy passed away in my life, I was genuinely so discombobulated, right? Like I just didn't know up from down. Like I just felt like I'm going to go with, I was in just pure fight or flight survival mode. I was terrified. I was a wife that we owned a very large company. I had a very easy life. I was able to take care of my kids and, just for 20 years be spoiled. And I was like a princess. I mean, that's just the truth. And when Jimmy passed away and the responsibility all fell on my lap, and I look over and I see that my daughters are devastated. I see that my family and friends are devastated. I see that it all fell on me to have to now be the provider and the mom and the strength. I now became the leader of the house. I've always had my own dreams and passions and ambitions, but I genuinely really liked being a mom. I've always been into personal development and growth, and I've always gone through seminars and I've always learned some new skill, some new technique, some new something, just because I am a forever student and I do like to learn. So I'm grateful for the personal growth that I went through, but I didn't really ever have to financially take care of myself because my husband was very successful at the time and we had a successful business. And yes, I helped out as much as I could and, ran the office and did the paperwork and the billing and filled in wherever I had to. However, he was the business, and when he passed away, I felt so much pressure on my shoulders to be able to step into his role and now become him on top of who I already was. And all the hats that I was wearing, now I had to put on his hat, which was extremely a lot. He had very big shoes to fill. I didn't have the skills that he had. We were general contractors. We had a very large general contracting company. We built high-end custom homes all throughout Los Angeles. I was not a general contractor. I couldn't build a house if I wanted to. I could design it. I could make it look pretty, but I certainly didn't know the ins and outs on how to build it. So when he got sick and when he passed away, having to replace the income and the lifestyle that my kids have been so used to honestly became like my biggest fear, right? And luckily, by the grace of God, we were in a financially good situation to where I had some money aside. So I was able to live on the money that we had. However, I also had a very expensive lifestyle that I was left with. And so the pressure that I felt was so heavy. I'm going to go with that. And I was so terrified that I think that that is what blinded me and how I got myself into the situation that I did. The relationship that I just walked away from, we were only married for 3.5 months. And when I went into that marriage, I clearly wasn't healthy enough to even be in the right headspace to choose a healthy partner. I wasn't clearly in a healthy place to be able to choose a person and really see who that person was. Once I turned my life back over to God, I'd ask God, I was like, just show me, Lord, like, what is going on here? Like, what is happening? Why is this relationship so hard? Like, what am I missing, God? Tell me, heal us. Like, I don't want to have this type of difficult marriage. Like, what is this darkness that was in our marriage? And I couldn't figure it out. We were in all the counselings, all the therapies, all the things. And as soon as I turned it over to God, He revealed to me literally the next day, I felt like, the whole picture and the whole story. And the truth is there's a lot of things that I just didn't miss. The person I was married to was not the person I thought that they were. And the reason that I missed those things is because I didn't do the inner work. I was blinded by my fear, by my wounds, by the pain that I had gone through in another relationship. So if you don't do the inner work, you get yourself in situations sometimes that aren't good for you, that you just can't see the whole picture. So with God, with clarity, I think that we just become a lot better at choosing the partners that we want in our life. I believe that God does have everything happen for a reason. And I think that truly meeting my soon to be ex husband, was not something that shouldn't have happened. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that it was all bad because I genuinely believe that he was an amazing human being. I did think that at the time. I think that we had a lot of really good things in our life. I think we had a lot of fun. I think I learned a lot from him. So there's a lot that I'm grateful for. There's a lot that I'm learning to see like the positive in. Did it end badly? Yes. Am I going to share that full story one day? Probably not. However, I can tell you this is that it releases so much pain and sadness when you truly turn it all over to God. I know in my heart what the truth is, and I know that God knows what the truth is. And so for me, I think that all I can say is if you're going through a hard time, there's no reason to have to thrash or bash or share the whole details. Is God knows. God's the judge. You don't need to be the judge. I don't need to be the judge. I don't even want to be the judge. I want to be obedient. I want to live on the easy path and not the hard path. And I want to trust that God is in control. I genuinely believe you cannot lose what's meant to be yours. So if you're in a relationship and if you're going through a hard time, I know that it's so easy to cling on to that person and just beg for them to change, beg for them to keep you, beg for them to take you back. But don't allow yourself to do that. Turn it over to God and say, you know what, Lord, I trust you. I know that you love me and you love him more than we love each other. And I ask that you put your hand in this situation. If this relationship is meant to work out, you guys, it will. You cannot lose what's meant to be yours. But if it's not meant for you, why do you want to force something that's not meant to be? It only is going to delay and drag out pain and frustration and confusion and anger and all of those emotions that are so exhausting simply because we latch on to people because of our own trauma. Look in the mirror, walk away from a relationship if you have to, and do the inner work. Work on you, work on yourself, work to become the person that God created you to be. So then you can attract the right type of relationship that we're all seeking. We all want to have relationships. I mean, I believe that, not all of us, but majority of the world. God did not make us to be alone. I can tell you, I don't want to be alone forever, but I can certainly tell you that I am absolutely not getting into a relationship until I look in the mirror and I'm like, okay, I have accomplished and done everything that God has told me to do to become the person that I need to be so I can attract the person that I know that I deserve to be with. It's a decision that you have to make to choose you. I'm not an advocate for divorce, so I just want to be very clear on that. I'm not telling you if you're in a relationship and you're married to jump out of your divorce. I was married for 20 years, and let me tell you, it was a very hard marriage 80% of the time. Getting married at 20 years old is extremely hard to do. Getting married that young is you go through so many challenges and so many changes. And, you know, especially with two people that had trauma from their youth, you bring it into your relationship. You don't know what it is. You blame it on each other. I mean, the list goes on and on. And again, that will be a whole nother podcast topic that we can talk about is healing our inner child wounds because they genuinely carry with us throughout our entire life, unless you are aware of them and you work to heal them. So can I tell you how I got here? How I got here onto this road of divorce? I blame it simply on not walking with God. I blame it on myself. Ultimately, I got myself here. Was I listening to God's word? Was I doing the things that I was supposed to do that I knew to do? No, I wasn't. And the truth is because I was angry. I was angry at God. When my late husband got sick and ended up passing away, it caused me so much fear and worry and stress and pain. Watching my daughter's hearts broken and it just destroyed their lives, you know, at the time. And just their family and friends. Like I had just developed so much anger at God that I wasn't even aware of, honestly, because when Jimmy was sick, I was so leaning into God, begging him for a miracle, praying for a miracle. And when God didn't provide that miracle, I think that it ultimately deep down, like now looking back, it just made me kind of think like, is God who I thought he was, right? Does God actually care about me and my kids and my family? Like, why did he not heal him? Why did he take him home? So that anger that I had, I felt like I just, again, kind of ignored it. I decided to heal through Jim's death and my life falling apart my own way. And I just chose to put my head in the sand. And honestly, I chose to stay busy. Well, that's what I do when I'm healing, right? I just put my head down and I told my girls, let's just go have fun. Let's go do all the things that your dad taught us to do over the next year. So we went racing, we went to the desert, we went to the river, we did all the things that we did as a family together. and all the fun that he had taught us and he had provided us in our life through the hard work that he had always done. He'd always worked so hard, but he gave us an amazing, fun life. And so I said, let's just take this year to heal and let's go have fun in memory of your dad. So we did. We went racing. We went to the desert. We went to the river. We did all the trips. We did all the things. We did the horse shows and the rodeos and just had fun. And about 1 year later is when I met my ex. And I was truly at the time, I felt like honestly, like God had brought him into my life was like such a blessing because I honestly kind of felt like God owed it to me. I was like, okay, Lord, I don't like to be single. I'm a woman that likes to be in a relationship. I'm a relationship person. I not into the single life. Like I don't want to go date a whole bunch of people. I don't even like to go on dates. I was just not who I was. And truly, I had gone on a dating website a year after my husband had passed away. One of my best friends actually made this website for me and she was like, you have to do this. You need to go on here. It's just going to help you meet people, Loni. And that's again a whole nother podcast for itself. But if you're a widow, if you're out there, hanging out with like your friend group and your family group is there's this energy that like is put at you that is really heavy. And not that people did it on purpose by any means. It wasn't like they were doing it intentionally, but my presence reminded everybody around me of the Jimmy was no longer there because we were together for 20 years. So Jimmy and Loni were a package deal. We did everything together. We went everywhere together. So when I showed up and Jimmy wasn't there, it was just a constant reminder to my friend group, to my family group that Jimmy was gone. And because they weren't living in it every single day like me and the girls were, that I think it was just life goes on when, somebody passes away that's not your immediate spouse or your parent that you talk to every single day, is when you show up in your friend group, you're like, oh, Jimmy's gone. And it's painful, right? Because it's the reminder that you lost a really cool soul, that you lost a best friend, that you lost a son, that you lost whoever it was in your life. And so I remember that was being probably the hardest thing for me because I'm an empath. So it's like, I feel what people feel. And so I'd go into a room and I'd feel all of these heavy emotions all the time. And so I remember wanting to not feel that way. I remember wanting to just have somebody that only knew Loni as Loni. And so my best friend was like, you need to go, on a dating site and don't date to like date, just date to like go have fun and meet people and do new things. She's like, just take it easy, take it slow, just go have fun. So we created a website and I was literally on there for like, I don't know, maybe a month or two. And I was like, this is a nightmare. If anybody that knows me knows, I hate text messaging. I'm the worst text messenger on the planet. And that's all this is, right? It's just like answering the stupid questions of like, oh, what's your favorite color? What are you into? What do you like? Like I literally actually had like copied sent like responses in my notes because I didn't want to type it out. And I was so tired of like the monotony of the same stupid question and the same stupid answer. And so I was like, okay, there's nothing fun about this. Not one person was I ever interested in even going on a date with. I was just like, no, no, no. I was extremely picky. And then I met my ex and there was something different about him. He was good at conversation and I just actually enjoyed talking to him. And so I was like, okay, like I like immediately was like ready. And I was like, I'll go on a date with him. Well, we jumped in on a date and we genuinely hung out every single day since. And it was like we became best friends like immediately. And where I went wrong was jumping into a relationship and getting so serious so soon. I think that was the problem. I think that I genuinely believed in my heart. This is where I feel like I'm still trying to understand and figure out like what the heck, God, because I genuinely believe that God had sent him to me as a gift. And I'm emotional over it. And I'm sorry because it's still fresh. Now I look back and I believe that God sent him to me as a lesson, sure. And as you can see, it's a very painful lesson. So how this became such a painful lesson, I believe, truly was because we dated for 8 months and spent literally every single day together. And then we got engaged 8 months into our relationship, which obviously now looking back was too soon. Like you don't know anybody, you don't know people in 8 months. I thought that I knew him because we'd spent so much time together. And honestly, the truth is I was just naive. I had only truly really dated my late husband when I was 17 years old. I mean, ultimately over that 20 years that we were together, that he was really the only person I was with. So I didn't have a lot of dating experience at all. And so I think that the lesson that I learned here was a few things. And I think that this is important for people. If you're newly a widow, if you're newly single, if you're going through a divorce, if you're going through even a breakup that after a few years you guys have been together, I think it's so important to work on you, to work on healing, to heal your heart before you get into something else, because it will distort your judgment. You have to heal your heart before you get into something else, because it will distort your judgment. I hope you hear that. My heart obviously was not healed. I was still angry at God. I was still mourning the loss. I've obviously never been a widow. So there is no rule book. There is no handbook. There is no, I don't know how to, there is no rules on how to handle it. I genuinely thought that God gave me a gift of meeting somebody so soon because he knew my heart and he knew that I am a relationship person and that I just wanted to build something with somebody. However, now looking back is I think God was saying to me, Loni, you need to learn to take care of yourself and to be okay alone. And I think that that was the biggest lesson that I had to learn. It's really easy to jump into another relationship. Let me tell you, it'd be very easy to go date anybody. You get hit as a girl, you guys know, my gosh, having social media, you get hit on every other day of your life. Like it's not hard to get into another relationship. However, it is hard to be alone. And that for me, and maybe I'm different than you, maybe it's not hard for you to be alone, but I believe that a lot of us are similar to myself. I think a lot of us have the same wounds of not wanting to be alone, the fear of being alone, wanting to be loved, all of those things that we have that come from childhood crap, right? I think that we all have those things, not all, but there's a lot of us that carry those with us, and it makes us make bad decisions, truly. And so when we met, we got engaged, we moved in together. We blended our two families. He had two boys, I had two girls. We brought them in together. It was hard, man. It was hard. And again, there's no rule book in being a widow. There's no rule book to this. So you kind of just think that the heart is normal, right? It's like you don't really know I didn't know what to compare it to. I had never met somebody that was in my situation. I didn't know anybody else that was 37-year-old widow with two children in a new relationship, how to do this. Like there needs to be a book written on it. And maybe I'll do that one day. Maybe that'll be the book that I write, is what to not do, because I know that. What to do, I don't know yet. I have to be determined. However, I do know what doesn't work, and that is moving in together and blending families and truly trying to live a life dating in a married role. And that is extremely hard. And I know, I feel like I still always deal with like God's rules, I guess you could say. I think that that's a lot of people are turned off by religion or Christianity, is because you feel like there's so many rules that you have to abide by. However, God's rules are not trying to punish us. They're not out of being a mean, strict God. They genuinely are rules because he knows that if you follow the rules, they come from love, because it only makes our life easier. If I would have gone the traditional route of what I knew in my heart, I was a Christian my whole life. I know God's rules. I know what the Bible says. I know what should have happened. I wasn't willing to do it because I was fearful. I was in love blindly, right? I was blindly in love. I was blindly in fear. I was just doing what I felt safe at the time. And instead of trusting God to come in and figure it out, as I was looking to somebody else to do that for me, I was leaning into my ex to be able to be that person to save me, to be my person, to take care of me, to let me lean on, to I put so much onto him, so much into him, that the terrifying part is when they take it away, it is devastating because you put so much into that person. The biggest lesson I learned through this is you have to put that all into God. Don't put that into another human, because God will never, ever, 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 ever take it away. He will never leave you. He will never abandon you. He will never hurt you, because he is whole. He is mighty. He is powerful. He is strong. He created everything. We're humans and we're broken and we have problems and we suffer with things and we all have issues. I mean, nobody is perfect by any means. And when you put that much in another human being, you put that much power in somebody else's hands, especially a human being's hands that has their own issues within. We all have our struggles. It's a very dangerous thing to play with because people can leave, people can die, people things go away. I mean, if there's anything I've learned is life and people are not always going to be there, but God is. So heal your heart. Don't jump into something else until your heart is not longing for something that was. And when you do find that person, just take it slow and truly listen to your gut instinct. I think there was many signs over the last year in our relationship before this all happened. It was hard and it was complicated. And truthfully, I feel like I my personality is very much like take ownership of my crap, right? I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I have issues. I know that I'm not by any means the perfect human being or the perfect partner. However, I do feel like one thing I am good at is owning my own stuff and looking in the mirror and being like, okay, is this a Lonnie issue? This might be a Lonnie issue. Like this keeps showing up over and over again. It has to be me. This can't just be other people, right? So I am good at looking within. I was confused because I was not in a healthy state to be in a relationship because I was vulnerable. I just lost a husband. I was not fully on my feet and stable. I was coming from a place of fear. And when I met this person, I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, God. Like, he's here to save me. Right. And that to me, I think is a very unhealthy place to be at when you're getting into a relationship. If you're looking for somebody to save you, if you're looking for somebody to fulfill you, if you're looking for somebody to give you something that you're lacking, you're not ready. Turn to God, and He will give you everything that you need to be first, and then go out and look for a relationship and look for that person because you attract what you are. The person that I attracted was not ready to be in a relationship, period. However, I attracted that because I also wasn't ready to be in a relationship, clearly. I knew in my heart that my heart had to heal, that I had to become the person that God wanted me to be and do the things that I was scared to do that I genuinely didn't want to do myself or alone because I was fearful. So I leaned into my person rather than leaning into God, and I got my heart broken because I gave them that power to be able to try to fulfill that part of me, and they're human and they can't do that. As soon as I lost that person, I felt completely broken. My heart was broken. I felt like my life literally had fallen apart because it had, right? I mean, we had made so many plans. We were building a house. I just sold my house. Like, I just felt like I didn't even know where to go. Like, I felt homeless. I felt heartbroken. I felt just completely betrayed. I felt so many emotions. I was so angry, and I was angry at him and I was angry at God because I was like, are you kidding me, Lord? Like, you just took a husband from me from cancer. Like, now you're taking another husband from me? Like, are you kidding me? Like, what the heck is happening right now? However, I can tell you that God doesn't do things to us because he's mean. He does things to us because he loves us and he knows and he wants what's best for us. That last year of our relationship was freaking hard. And like I was saying, I truly thought it was normal for it to be so hard because it was a hard situation. Well, yeah, you're right. You're dated a widow. That's probably hard. Yeah, you're right. My daughters are mourning, and yeah, that's hard. Yeah, you're right. You moved into the home that me and my late husband built together. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, you're right. Like, it's only been, 2 years. I probably still do have issues. You're right. It is me. I just kept owning the fact that I was the problem. And I think what God showed me is that it it wasn't me that was the problem. It wasn't life that was the problem. The problem was we were looking for each other to fulfill things that we both had broken within us, and we were unable to do that. God was like, look to me. God doesn't need to have a timeline. There's no timeline of him to be able to come in and comfort you. It doesn't have to be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road where you're like, yeah, I'm ready to be in a relationship. I'm comforted. Is God can bring peace and comfort and fulfillment and purpose to your life, but humans cannot, right? And I feel like it got really distorted for me because I felt like I lost my identity. I felt like I was like, hey, well, who am I? Like, I wasn't a wife at this time yet, but I was living in a wife role. I was still living in the home that I'd had, but I was still trying out the homemaker, or am I like the entrepreneur? Like, what hat am I wearing? Putting a person into that house was extremely complicated because it was confusing, right? It was very confusing. So if there's anything that I can teach you is go slow, turn your life to God and listen to him. If I would have listened, I wouldn't have had them move into my home. If I would have listened, I probably wouldn't have gotten married as soon as I did. If I would have listened, I probably would have seen the things that I missed, living my life blindly out of fear. And I was clinging on to a dream that I had. I want a family. I want a healthy marriage. I wanted to have sons. I wanted all of these things. And so the dream that I had distorted the reality. And you have to look at the reality for it is what it is and not what you want it to be, not the potential. We all see potential in people where you're just like, yeah, it could be so good. It could be this. It could. But you have to look at what it is. If it's not what your dream is and you're trying to make it and force it to be that, and you think like, okay, well, if I just do this, I'm going to change it, or I can do this, or I can do that. You cannot manipulate something to become something that it's not. God can. God can heal. If God wants you in a relationship, he will mend it. I wasn't following God's plan for my life at all when I got to that relationship. I was living my life driving the car. I always use this as an analogy. Is when Jimmy got sick and I jumped into the world, I was angry at God. And so I took the wheel and I was driving, and it was off-roading, and I liked off-road. It was fun. I'm not going to lie. It was fun. Life was good. We were having a good time. It was fun. However, after a while of off-roading, his car starts to break down. The tires started to get flat and the engine started to smoke, and it became, hard to see. And ultimately I ended up driving myself right off a cliff because I was taking the wheel fully. God does not want us to take the wheel. God says, give me the wheel. Trust me to drive. You sit passenger, you be obedient, you do the navigating part that you're supposed to do in your life, and let me take you there. And God will get us to the destination that he has created for us, However, every time we take the wheel, we cause delays and we go the long route and the hard route and the bumpy route. And he doesn't want that for us. He wants to get us there smoothly. It's just we don't listen. If there's anything that I've learned this point forward in my life, mark my words, is I am listening to that inner instinct, that inner knowing. We are in such a busy world all the time. I feel like we're so overstimulated and we're just constantly be thrown at information, is that we're just bombarded with information all the time that it's so hard to be still. When we're laying in bed, the TV's on, we're scrolling on our phones, we're just distracted all the time. But if we tune in at least one time a day, turn off all the distractions and check in with yourself and do a true gut check and be like, okay, I'm not distracted. I'm paying attention. I'm focused. Does this feel right? Is this right for me? Am I on the right path? You always know what you should do. It's just we use this here to convince ourselves otherwise. Our brains will get us in some serious trouble because they just run and run and run and run and run and run and run. And a lot of times we're working from the unhealthy part of our brain, that's the survival part of our brain, that's coming from fear and not even logic. We're not even working from the part of our brain that truly is even the smart part of our brain. You have to follow that gut instinct because it is your inner knowing and it will tell you what you need to know. Like my mom has always told me my entire life growing up, if you do what you know, you'll know what to do. And that just means listening to that inner knowing and stopping and paying attention to it and letting it lead you and guide you in your life. It would have saved me so much pain if I would have listened to that inner knowing and paused and set back. Again, I didn't do that. And I can beat myself up for it. And I'm going to tell you, I think that's my superpower. I think my superpower is to beat myself up and to tear myself down and to seriously be so hard on myself. I am my biggest critic. However, God doesn't want that for us. God says, look, you're a human being. You're going to mess up. You're going to follow your brain because we're living in Satan's world. And Satan gets in your head and he will confuse you and he will lie to you and he will manipulate you and he will steal from you the path that God wants you to be on because he shines the light over here. Like, it's so much fun. Look over here. It's so shiny, so bright, so cool. You're missing out. So you get distracted and you go and you get off of God's path. And man, oh man, let me tell you, it is a painful road back to get over here. You're like, okay, I'm back, God. I'm back. If we just do what we know and stay on the path, your life will be so much greater. And he'll allow you to give yourself grace and forgiveness. I could continue to beat myself up for, really, Loni, you moved to manage your house, you knew better. You did these things before you were married, you knew better. You knew better. I did know better, but I didn't do better. And I can beat myself up for that. And I can literally relive that on repeat over and over and over again. Or I can say, you know what, God, please forgive me. Loni, forgive yourself. Move forward, learn from your mistakes, and don't repeat them again. And that is the dedication that I make to myself. Move forward, trust in God's plan. I fully trust that God is in control of my life. And let me tell you, if you're going through heartbreak and you're struggling and you genuinely feel like you just cannot even breathe, because it is the most, heartbreak is the most painful thing I've ever experienced my entire life. I'm going to tell you, and again, I went through a death of a spouse. When Jimmy died, sad, I was so sad, but in a different way. I was sad, but I was also almost grateful because I knew that Jimmy was never going to be Jimmy again. I knew that Jimmy didn't want to live how he became after being sick and after having brain surgeries and after having a brain bleed and all the things that he went through. He wasn't who he was anymore. And I remember demanding God. I remember saying, God, you either heal him or you take him home. I said, but it is not okay for him to stay this way. And God literally took him home a very short time later. So when Jimmy passed away, it's that missing sadness, but it's not a sadness of betrayal. If you're going through a heartbreak and somebody chose to leave you and chose to not have you in their life, like, that freaking hurts. And that is hard on a human being in general. And it takes digging deep to find your worth and your value and to respect yourself and say, look, that person's decision to leave me and to not be in my life has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. It is their story, their journey, their choices. They can go whatever path they want. It does not devalue you in any freaking way at all. So remember that. When people choose to leave you, let them go. Turn to God and say, God, heal me. It hurts. But God genuinely loves you so much, and He loves that person, that literally what I've been doing every single time that I get that wave of just pain, something will show up, or somebody will text me, or somebody reminds me of something going on. And finally, I had to tell people, I'm like, stop telling me. Like, I just don't want to know. I literally would get on my knees and I would say, God, I give it to you. I don't want to carry the pain of that person's choices, and we don't have to. We can be fully responsible for how we choose to show up and how we choose to respond. And that means giving it to God and trusting His plan. If that person that you love is supposed to be yours, they will be. If they're not, let them go. You cannot force something that's not meant to be. What you can do is look in the mirror, work on yourself, and put all of that pain and drive and focus on your purpose, on becoming your best self, on becoming and doing all the things that you've ever wanted to do in your life. We spend so much time focusing on the person that hurt us. What if you channeled all of that energy, all of that pain, all of that focus onto the thing that God created as our purpose in our life? For me, it's a podcast. For me, it's helping other people, 10 within. I've always loved that saying of being a 10 within and helping women remember who they are and their worth and their value, and to remind ourselves that things that people do have nothing to do with you. They didn't leave you because you're not enough. They didn't love you because you're not lovable. People can only love themselves. They can only love you as much as they love themselves, right? So if they can't love you at the level that you want them to, don't beg them for love that's not worthy of your time. Let them go on their journey. Let them do what they need to do. If they choose to heal and God genuinely wants you to be together, it will be. And if He doesn't, I promise you His plan is so much better than our plans. And knowing that and trusting that and believing that in your heart will get you through any heartbreak. I promise you, because I'm in the midst of it. Whenever I feel sad, whenever I feel that heaviness come over me, I turn it to God and I say, God, He belongs to you. You love Him more than I love Him. You're in control. I trust you. Whatever your plan is for my life is the plan that I want to live. I fully surrender and I give it to you. The comfort and peace that saying that and meaning it, what that does to you, truly is life-changing, my friends. It truly is life-changing. Breakups suck. They are painful, and it's an emotional roller coaster. But you don't have to do it alone. Turn to God. Let Him heal you. Let Him mold you into the person that you are born to be. Become the person that's going to attract the relationship that you deserve. And then look to be with the person that you want to be with. And see who shows up at your door. Because at this point, I told God, I'm not dating. I'm not going on these dating websites. You're literally going to bring my husband to my front door at this point, because I know that I'm not going to play this game. I'm trusting God fully that I know when the timing is right and I am ready to be in a relationship with somebody, that God is going to bring him to me. I don't have to go searching for him. And in the meantime, I'm going to learn that I'm okay dating God. I'm okay with my family, with my friends, with my kids, with me, being alone at night by myself. Did I ever think that I would be so content being alone by myself? Never. The only thing that I can tell you is that I've totally surrendered my life to God and I don't ever feel alone. I don't ever feel alone. I actually enjoy going to bed because I feel like that's God's nice quiet time. I feel like instead of having a relationship where you roll over and you snuggle or you talk or whatever, is I now give that time to God and I have conversations with God every single night. He is my bedtime buddy. Turn it over to God and it will change your life.